I was raised in a very Talmudic environment where we would play a game called Just Hear Me Out, where we would be assigned, my brother and I would be assigned, an argument that we would have to make, like anything, like that human beings should eat grass, not beef. Or, the most fertile tree is in the winter, like something insane. And we would have to come up with an argument to try and convince someone that that is the truth. So I'm raised that way. Like, I understand that. The reason I warn people against that way of thinking is it makes you insane. Like, my parents had me later in life, and my mother is not Talmudic at all. She's very salt of the earth Germanic. My dad is very, very Talmudic. Like, whatever he can argue, whatever he can get away with is the truth. The truth doesn't exist outside of his own will. And I understand that. Like, I'm familiar with it. It's not, this isn't quote unquote anti-Semitism. It's a deep philosophical thing where, you end up being so unbridled and unmoored to reality that you go completely nuts. And my parents had me later in life, so I got to see the end of the road for where this goes. My parents are in their 80s now, and my mom is totally normal and happy and functional, and my dad has no idea what reality is and is miserable. And you might say that I have daddy issues. I don't. I love my dad. It's all good. It's just reality. Like, if you have a dad that works in coal mines and he gets black lung, like, you see that. And I see all the, a lot of the people he worked with, they all ended up totally crazy. Because the game of truth is whatever we can argue and get away with ends very badly for the people participating in that. I would be in favor of abortion if the mother's life was at risk. That's the only time I would ever be in favor of abortion. Because I don't, obviously, if the mother's life is at risk, that is a situation. Now, the Talmud would argue, well, the mother's life's at risk if she can't work and can't buy, the clothes she wants. You see how, conniving that is? It's about the spirit of honesty. And that's why the world's getting so nuts, is because people don't trust each other's arguments anymore because the game has gone too far. Because you don't trust the other's intention. If I trusted people's intention that when they said, abortion is if a mother's life is at risk, I would be like, oh yeah, totally. And a lot of people used to be very naive to this, and they would say, yeah, nobody would want an abortion, but nobody would want to have a woman die, if the child is affecting her life. So a lot of people assume people are reasonable and that they're trying to do what's right. Well, the Talmudic type does not think that way. They would think, let's chop up the baby and sell it for parts. And the longer we can go in the womb and chop it up, the more money we'll make. And so that's why we're now at partial birth abortions, where a woman could be in labor, kill her baby, sell it for parts to pharmaceutical companies, and use the Talmudic reasoning of when life begins, and it's a woman's choice and a woman's body, and it's just a clump of cells, blah, 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 and then the next week, Hamas is killing babies in the womb, right? So they don't actually believe anything. And that's the Talmud. Okay, that's their worldview. And there's Jews that have an honest worldview, and there's Muslims that have a distorted worldview, and everybody's different. I know some Jews I trust really well, but if you analyze what the Talmud is on a fundamental level, it's not a book of rules. It's a book of debates. Okay, so rabbis 500 years ago would debate on what age can you bang a little kid. And that debate is what they reference for when they're passing judgment. It's very much like the American legal system, where it's it's like every society is a combination of the two, where you have your fundamentals, but then you have your Talmud, you have your corruption, where it's well, it depends on what you mean by murder. The Talmud argues that if you tie up a man, this is in the Talmud, If you tie up a man and he starves to death, you did not kill that man. That man killed himself because because his body killed himself. All right. Even though you tied him up and wouldn't let him get food. That's the type of thinking you're dealing with. And that's why when you're looking at a lot of Arabic countries, you're looking at Russia, you're looking at China, these people don't want to engage in diplomacy with America anymore or Israel because they know they're dealing with loophole-seeking, conniving leprechauns. Because that's the nature of the Talmud. They will say, oh, we won't drop any bombs, and then they'll redefine the word bomb. You know, they'll say, oh, we meant B-O-M-E, a bomb, or like B-O-M, trademark, bomb, it's a candy. I'm not kidding, they think that way. And they go, we didn't drop any bombs, we dropped bombs. And someone's like, you guys are a bunch of assholes. And they're like, tee-hee, tee-hee. And I'm telling you guys, I lived with this growing up. It ends with people crying every morning for no reason. They don't know reality. They are miserable. They are emotionally, because you got the Talmud is pathos for pathology, which is emotion, and Sharia is logos, logic, that which doesn't change, the rules, laws of nature. And then the Christian is more on the path of redemption, which is a great path. Don't get me wrong. Like a lot of Christians I know are on a great path for self-governance, which I'm a big fan of, but Christians don't really structure laws in a society because it's more of a personal journey, which is why the Islamic Jewish clash is so fundamental. Is truth static or is truth whatever you can argue? And this is why you're not going to see a lot of quote unquote peace in the Middle East, because it's based on that fundamental worldview. I hope that helps. Much love.